Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to season 2 of the Monastic Field School at Lindores. What I want to do is give you some background to the project to begin with, without working on the assumption that you already know about it. The Chironensian Abbey of Lindores, founded in the late 12th century by David, Earl of Huntingdon, as a daughter house of Kelso on the eastern side of the medieval borough of Newborough, along the Tay estuary in Fife, and it's operated by French monks from Tyrol in northern France. In 2016, the farm was developed into Lindores Abbey Distillery. Lindores is on record as being the home of Scottish whisky. Aqua Vitae is being made there for James III in the 15th century. The Abbey Distillery jumped on that straight away and have been developing that over the years. I got into discussions with Professor Alison Beach of the University of St Andrews, who had been working on a field school in Ireland on the Blackfriars Monastery, and thought it would be nice if we did something similar in Scotland. Initially, we were thinking of going to Elcho Nunnery outside Perth, but I wrote to the owner 5 times and he never ever replied. So we looked at each other and thought, yes. We went to visit Lindores, had a very useful conversation with Drew Mackenzie Smith, who operates the distillery and is still the hereditary keeper of Lindores Abbey. We explained to Drew what we wanted to do. He threw open his doors and said, but I said, well, okay, we would like to start in the scheduled bit first, I think. So we applied for scheduled monument consent. More of that in a minute. It's worth pointing out, I'll say more about this later on, but the Abbey was fairly extensively tidied up by Alexander Lang and some of his cronies in the 19th century. He is on record as saying that anybody visiting this site would not be able to appreciate its ecclesiastical grandeur because it was so overgrown and it was in a really bad state. He wanted to tidy it up to make it look like Holyrood Abbey. That happened, and as you'll see later on, it certainly did happen. The site was cleared by Lang, so you have your first ground plan there of it on the left. It's then surveyed by the Royal Commission in 1937. On that plan, everything with the building layout is on the north side of the road. That is the scheduled area, but it's worth pointing out to you that the Abbey extends on the other side of the road, but that bit's not scheduled. There were some geophysical surveys that took place on the site by Edinburgh Archaeological Field Society, did one of them, both resistivity and magnetometry. And as you can probably see from the resistivity survey on the left there, quite a lot of features showing up. So we thought we would try and target those in our first season and the scheduled area. I'll explain the way that our project was going to work in a second, but it's worth telling you, before the distillery was built, Rebecca Shaw of Rebecca Shaw Archaeology did some work on the southern side of the road, and as you can see, there is archaeology there, and it's not very far down. There is building evidence all over the place, and this rather nice clay-lined tank, which might or might not be the still for making the whiskey. Couldn't possibly comment. It's worth saying, though, that Derek Alexander of the National Trust has been doing quite a lot of work at Glenlivet Distillery, specifically on the late 19th century stuff, and he tells me that he is finding features very similar to that. I don't think it's the still, but it might well be some sort of steeping tank. It's clay-lined. So, Alison Beach sat down with myself and Darbrooks Headstrom from Brandeis University in New York, Dr. Kim Curran. And we thought it would be really interesting to look at water use around the Abbey. That's not really something that's been done very much in Scotland. It's been done quite a lot in Yorkshire. But water is a pretty major component of an abbey anyway, both fresh water and the way of flushing out the monastic drain. And you need water to make whiskey. This project would be administered by Global St Andrews. We would put out a call for people who would be interested in working on the field school. They get charged for being part of the field school, and that's essentially how the project is funded. So, at Lindores, there is an open culvert that is coming down from the Loch of Lindores, which is about 2 or 3 kilometres to the south, at a much higher level. And I think that is probably being used to flush out the drain. But I think it's a circular process. I'll show you a plan in a minute that explains that. Fresh water, I think, is coming from 2 wells up on the cliff there above the Abbey, the Monk's Well and the Abbot's Well. So our trench plan there on the left is what we applied for schedule monument consent for our first season. We didn't get schedule monument consent until about halfway through our first season. So we had to come up with a plan B, which is digging trenches that are not in the scheduled area. That's what you can see there on the right of screen, trenches 8 to 11. We found good archaeology in at least 2 or 3 of them, and it was actually quite a good introduction for people that had never ever done any archaeology before in their lives. I'm a great believer in teaching people the nuts and bolts of the subject, so I introduced them all to Pythagoras and 3, 4, 5 triangles, which was highly entertaining. But one interesting thing that came out of our first season, good morning, my name's Derek, I'm a ceramic specialist. 2 of the sherds that came up, I was pretty sure, just from visual identity, that they were French. Lo and behold, chemical sourcing has proved that to be the case. We have this sherd from a very highly decorated jug from northern France. We have this rather nice ceramic bird whistle from the Saintonge. That's only the 2nd whistle from Scotland, the other one being from Ayrshire. And that probably dates quite late, 15th or 16th century. But rather nice things to find, and gives us a nice link to the mother house of the Abbey. So, as was the case in the first year, we always kick off the field school with a field trip. This year we went to Arbroath Abbey, where several people had enormous fun dressing up as various versions of monastic orders. Then we went to Risteneth Priory, which, if you've never been there, is a fantastic site. It's got its own ambience about it, well worth a visit. And hooray, we got schedule monument consent. So for season 2, we are actually be able to do what we wanted to do in season 1. On the right there, you will see Derek's cunning theory about how the monastic drain is being flushed. Now, can I just say, we don't actually know where the drain is yet, but that's one of the things that we're looking for in our trenches. My argument is that at high tide, the Tay is coming in at point A into the drain, flushing it across site, it's downhill, to point B, which is the water coming down from Lindores Loch, which is then taking it back out to the river at point C. So my argument is it's a circular process, and that's what I'm trying to prove. So this year we opened 6 trenches, all of these within the scheduled area. I'll look at each of these in turn. Trench 1 in the Abbey kitchen. It had been identified as being the Abbey kitchen in the Royal Commission survey. So we wanted to see if we could prove that. For a group of people being introduced to archaeology, I felt really sorry for the people in this trench. They spent most of the 4 weeks digging out a metre of dumped rubble using hand shovels and buckets before we actually got down to the stratified archaeology with 2 days to go until the end of the project. But as you can see in the slide, there is good stratified archaeology. We have wall foundations beginning to come up, so we will need to carry on in this trench next year. Find-wise, rather appropriately for a distillery, we have a barrel hoop at top left there, probably Victorian. That's in the dumped rubble. Lots of animal bone, which has yet to be looked at by a specialist, but that's all coming out of the stratified deposits. And on the last day, somebody found a short cross penny, which I think is 14th century. From all of this demolition material, there is loads and loads of 19th century ceramics, and there's the odd bit of recycled medieval material. Potential is enormous, but we need to get back in there and take all the backfill out and start working on the stratified material again. Trench 2, right in the middle of the cloister, in the geophysics, there is a circular anomaly showing up. I thought, I wonder if that could be a fountain. Maybe there was a fountain in the middle of the cloister. Let's have a look at that. So we did a bit of pacing and worked out where the anomaly was and laid out a 2x2 over the top of it. And we do have a circular feature, but we have a circular feature that is filled with rubble, including quite a bit of reused masonry from the Abbey, quite a lot of residual medieval pottery. No sign whatsoever that that's a fountain. But recently, I discovered this black and white photograph in St Andrews University Special Collections, and there's a tree standing right in the middle of the cloister. So I do wonder if that's where it's been taken out. We don't know how old that tree is. Could be a recent thing, but we need to do a bit more research into that. Trench 3, supervised by Callum Muir, who is in the audience. This is looking at a linear anomaly that is running right the way across the cloister. We all thought initially that might be some sort of water course, moving water around that part of the Abbey. But what we have is a linear cut feature, presumably running right the way across, and it's filled with rubble. And this rubble includes reused masonry from the Abbey. I don't know if you can probably see it on the right-hand side there. There's one of the arcade pillars from the cloister arcade line running along the side. So this is a lot of stuff that has been moved around the Abbey, I think probably by Alexander Lang and his friends. Trench 4, supervised by Professor Alison Beach. There is a linear anomaly coming into the site from the northern side. In the boundary wall, just beyond this trench, there is a blocked archway, and I wonder if that might be the access into the monastic drain. Next year, we'll have a look and see if that's the case. But I wanted to see if we could pick up a drain on that particular line, and we do have one running right next to the wall. Now, it's not very wide. There is still the possibility that it might be a rainwater gully taking water off the roof of the church. But next year, I want to open more trenches on the line of that anomaly, just to see if we can prove that one way or another. Trench 6 was in a building that we thought might be where the rear daughter or toilet complex was of the Abbey. And again, there was a linear anomaly running right the way down that wall. And we do have some sort of stone-lined drain feature. As you can see to begin with, it's got loads of oyster shell in it. I mean, it is packed with oyster shell. And there's a good stone edge to that feature. Trench 5, going back a step, that is a continuation of the anomaly that Callum was looking at in Trench 3, more rubble, rather appropriately given the fact that we have the cats of Lindores that have their own Instagram page. There's a cat skeleton in Trench 5. Maybe it's an ancestor. Going back to Trench 6, lots of oyster shell in that drain fill, but also this, a copper alloy seal stamp. This is for signing letters on the wax at the bottom of the letter. That has a coat of arms in it. There is more research needs to be done on this, but I am wondering if it belongs to Bishop John Leslie, who was the commendator at Lindores post-Reformation. He is dealing with handing out the Abbey estates, handing out all of the money, as well as the stamp. There are 2 coins, which may well be Nuremberg jetons. I wonder, I mean, these are used for accountancy. That's the strange diagram at the bottom right there. That's the way that you use jetons to work out your figures. No, I don't know how it works. You have to believe me. And from lower down, we have another coin, which has recently been identified by Jesper Eriksson at the Hunterian Museum as being a crux pellet of James III, 1451 to 88. The interesting thing is that's coming out of a potential foundation trench for one of the walls. So are we looking at a bit of remodeling of the Abbey going on here at the slightly later period? Interesting. Going back to Alexander Lang, I wonder, are the features that we've got in 2, 3, and 5 all related to his tidying up of the Abbey? He's moving stone around for sure. I think part of the cloister, part of the Abbey guest house collapses and that rubble is moved around, which is why you get the odd bit of moulded stone. So yeah, he's done an awful lot of tidying up. And we have to keep that in mind in future years when we start finding slightly curious things. Now, I'll email you all and tell you when to turn your telly off in January because we got on Digging for Britain, which I have to say was a fairly interesting experience, if only because you have to remember what you've said at least 5 times because they take it from different drones. It's very tiring, said the aging archaeologist. But I think that will do us some good. I think there will be a very Scottish version of that next year because they were at Glencoe as well and East Lomond. So that would fit together quite nicely as a programme. So in closing, I'd like to thank the 2025 team of students who not only came from America, there was somebody there from Australia, there was somebody there from Mexico. They had never been to Scotland before in their lives, so I think they had quite good fun and introduced to archaeology. None of them will ever probably want to do it ever again. And this is where I got my title from, because Trench 2 was right in the middle of the cloister, and we were told when we arrived to start opening our trenches that there was a wedding booked for the distillery the week after next, so please don't open that trench until the wedding's finished. We did that, it was backfilled, geotextile was put down, and people had great fun filling it in by actually dancing on top of the geotextile. In closing, come and see us next year. We'll be on site again in June, opening more trenches, looking for the continuation of that drain, and maybe looking inside parts of the Abbey as well. Thank you very much.